transferring the knowledge that used to take place from the older generations to the young in taking over by artificial intelligence? What kind of humans will we be in the future? So Zach, please, now it's your time to give us the gift of sharing your knowledge and wisdom about this theme.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for organizing this, and for Adam and Sandra. I was very, very interested in what you both said. Sandra, particularly your work with the young men, I think is incredibly important and actually relevant to this. It'll change a little bit of what I said, or what I thought I was going to say. So I wrote the paper, and the paper stands, and you can all read the paper. So I'm not just going to kind of regurgitate the paper here. And I've stated the basic hypothesis of the paper many times, which is that, as was said, AI is going to get better at doing a lot of stuff. AI will become the kind of definition of artificial general intelligence would be that at everything, it's as good or better than human intelligence, just artificial. And so the rhetoric with AI is that we will be solving things like the climate crisis because it's more complex than the human brain can figure out, but the artificial intelligence could perhaps somehow do the climate crisis, or the artificial intelligence could somehow run a centralized economy that would massively make more efficient supply chains, or it would be able to engineer vaccines, or so on and on. That the artificial intelligence does the things that the human intelligence couldn't do, or has always been bad at. Too complex. One of the things that's always been too complex for humans is raising the little humans from the perspective of certain people, right? Teachers always been inefficient. Mothers, fathers, not dependable, especially if they have to go to work all day and can't really pay attention to their kids. So we're going to be pushing towards the application of AI in the domains of socialization. We're already seeing it in personal assistants and therapists, and immediate chatbot application to therapy. In fact, the first chatbot, Eliza Weizenbaum, was a Rogerian therapist. Of course, Weizenbaum, so it's like the 60s. I'll tell this story and then I'll move on. You know, it's a computer the size of a room, right? Because it's 1916. It's running the first chatbot ever, Eliza, and he sets his secretary to begin to chat with it, and she immediately asks him to leave the room as she begins to chat with the bot, which is like, it's a huge computer. Like, it's obvious. It's not even close to being neat and shiny like an Apple iPhone or something. Immediately, she anthropomorphizes to the extent that she asks him to leave the room. So Weizenbaum's first reaction to this whole thing is, don't build machines that imitate humans. If you keep building machines that imitate humans, you're going to obsolete human relationship, and you're going to deeply, deeply confuse a bunch of moral issues. So he actually had a moral imperative. He's like, we can build machines that do that. Totally. We shouldn't. We ought not. We should limit our exploration in those realms of simulating human interiority with massive machine intelligence. And so in the domain of socialization, when we start to solve the problem of human socialization by applying artificial intelligence, it begins with the tutors, the AI tutors. Well, actually, it begins with the personal assistants, who you can't not adopt because your competitors are adopting their AI personal assistants. So there's an arms race that kind of like normalizes getting the AI personal assistant. That allows your kid to have a tutor, right? He's disadvantaged if he doesn't have a tutor. These other kids have tutors. So there's this buy-in. It just spreads. The idea that a therapist is an AI, the idea that a tutor would be, already companies pursuing this. The idea that we get a more wholesale digital socialization system, which is to say that we move on parenting, that we begin to replace parents with really convincing, really responsible, smarter than your mom could ever be, knowing more about you than your mom ever could, more charismatic than your mom ever could be, totally attending to you all the time because you're interacting with it through augmented reality lenses, where there's a simulated humanoid in your environment all day who's more articulate and knowledgeable than any adult you've ever met. That thing's being pursued. That thing breaks intergenerational transmission very fundamentally, more fundamentally than any other technology, because it's trying to do that. it's trying to have the majority of socialization be human-machine interaction rather than socialization being human-to-human interaction, which is what it has been for as long as we've been thinking ourselves as human. So that's a very fundamental intergenerational rift. There's a certain point at which the socialization system captures enough that we have a generational speciation event. And Habermas discusses this in the context of genetic engineering, where in fact, if you unilaterally design the next generation genetically, how do they understand themselves? Not as free, but as your design, therefore unaccountable for their behaviors. Their behaviors are a result of your design, not nature, nurture, and the complexities of human choice making as we typically understand it. So there's a rift. They don't have the same moral self-understanding because they've been unilaterally designed genetically. So Habermas points out we can do that. We can actually break the life world. We can make it so that the youth don't understand what it's like to be the human the way we understand what it's like to be the human in such a fundamental way that it's almost like a speciation event. And so I'm saying AI, that's an eventuality with the AI-enabled socialization systems that will make it so that at some point, the majority of a younger generation, I don't know when that is, but it's not actually as far as we'd like it to be, most of their experience is socialization with a digital, with a digital. It'll be, it won't be a screen. Again, it's augmented reality. So yeah, so that's what the paper's about. But the tutor's only one piece of it. The domas, which is a term in anthropology. So now I'm returning to Sandra's work. So the domas, which emerged in archaeological time very, very long ago. We built things that were small structures where we cohabitated, cooked, ate meals together, grow food adjacent, right? You can think of it as like a household. It's a very ancient structure, more ancient than civilization. One definition of civilization, this is James C. Scott's work in his book Against the Grain. The civilization is the thing that captures the domus, right? Which is to say the civilization thing makes use of the domus, extracts from the domus, reorganizes the domus for its own sake. So there's some kind of anthropologically deep-seated modality of cohabitation living together, right? The basic structure of intergenerational transmission, where you and I work together to keep this life going in this place, right? Where we grow these things and these animals are around, et cetera. It's a little bit fictitious because we can't reconstruct it, but from very sketchy archaeological evidence. But these things exist. Long before we find city-states that have divisions of labor and taxes and calendars and measures and all of that stuff. So the capture of the domus, the capture of the domus by the city-state, because then you get these structures where there's a whole bunch of them organized, and they all grow the same grains, and they all have the same calendar, and they all get taxed the same, and on and on. So the other thing that's happening is the Internet of Things. So we talk a lot about the AI and almost say AI. When we say AI, also we mean the generative models, the ones that talk to us. And we kind of, AI broke into the public culture because it started talking to us, but it had been organizing our news feeds and driving our Teslas and doing a whole bunch of other stuff before it started talking to us. But we started paying attention to it and talked. But most of the scariest AI stuff isn't the chat and generative models, it's the other stuff. It's the supply chain optimization due to in-house surveillance of commodity use, due to presence of machine learning sensors within the domus. Right. So Alexa, right? Amazon, listening to everything. You're out of milk. Right. Who put that there? Some massive corporation put that there. So the sensor networks that are now embedded in most of the domestic technologies are increasingly linked into the Internet of Things. And the capture of the time and attention and energy flow through the domus which was like capitalism again. If you think about the seizure of that domestic space by the non-domestic and predatory, you get that in a very real way. And so that is increasing. And so you have to think about that. You have to think about the capture of the domas by the civilization through the linking of each household through sensor network to the Internet of Things. And then in that context, that's where the tutor knows how to supervise the child. Because that's what you have to understand. It's not that that's a screen. You have to think about the AI that's the tutor interacting with the sensor network of the house, interacting with the neighborhood. So my kid is safe as hell because these glasses that put a humanoid talking to him knows everything that's in the house, in the fridge, state of the stove, state of the washer dryer, right? Everything that the kid looked at that day in terms of what was on the screen, and even what he looked at in terms of where he looked. And then all the other kids were there at in the neighborhood. And then all the other adults were there in the neighborhood where the cops are. And on and on. So it's very hard to say, like, no, don't put the kid in a situation of being perfectly safe in the domus, even though he's actually perfectly surveilled by some entity. So that's the eventuality. And it's wedded to this broader capture and this broader project of domestication that has been this history of civilization, which is now self-terminating, the climax of its most advanced technologies, becoming radically predatory and dangerous to the people. So I don't see an easy way to stop that AI tutor from being built. When I look at the amount of venture capital that's moving into the AI space and the ease of that sales pitch I just gave, and that was like, that's why I'm hesitant to talk about this stuff, because it's also like the wrong people are going to be like, let's build that thing, even though I'm saying that thing destroys humanity. They're like, let's build it because we make a lot of money. I'm like, guys, like, you clearly don't have kids and like never walk in the woods or do anything that normal humans do, and you just maximize money. You're a transhumanist, but you shouldn't build this thing. Yeah. But it's such a good sales pitch, especially the one about keeping the kids safe. And how could you not give your kid access to everything in the world in terms of knowledge perfectly explained to him? So it's hard to not want to build that, but we can't build it. And this is Weizenbaum's point. He's like, it's hard not to want to build a robot that talks to us. It's like an amazing magic trick. And I don't know when I started, so if I've been at 10 minutes, I should be stopped.
No, I would kindly ask you, kindly,
okay.
if you can give us in 1 minute your suggestions, just to wrap up this first part, your suggestions about the limits that you brought in your chapter, but maybe it could be interesting for
so
the
there are like
participants.
so there are design principles. So it's kind of like, well, take a step back. These are really advanced technologies, and we're just like letting them loose on human minds. So that's step one. It's like, let's just not do that. Like, billions of people are affected immediately by these chatbots. Like, and then, so we need to just be like more responsible as adults with our most advanced toys. We just don't let the kids play with the most advanced toys. So we just need to think in a very clear way about regulating this class of technology. To me, that's a no-brainer. But we're used to letting the technology companies exploit the kids, which is what Facebook does. So just let them do that. But we shouldn't do that. So there's regulation. So that's regulation. Nope. Under 18, don't look at AI. Full stop. Boom. Problem solved. Maybe don't even look at one of these. I'm like that radical, because this stuff's predatory. It's not, you think they tell you it's good, that's their marketing, but it's actually predatory for your kid. It's destroying his amygdala while it's making money. Outlaw that. Then if you're going to build AI in educational space, then there's simple rules that I lay out in the chapter. And one of them is, don't make the thing pretend to be a human. Just don't do that. It's a very slippery slope, and it shouldn't be done. As a design principle, there's a lot of ways to make extremely powerful educational technologies with AI. And I have a lot of ideas, but that don't involve making something that talks to you, that pretends to be a human. So that's a very simple design principle. Other ones have to do with fiduciary interest, which is somehow the ability to assure that the party who is engaging, meaning me, that my best interests are actually being held by the AI that I'm interacting with, like a lawyer or a doctor. Is a fiduciary responsibility. You have to somehow be able to do that. But if the code's inscrutable, which it is in the chat models, that's a whole other conversation. They don't know what the fuck's going on in there. Then it's very hard to ever prove value alignment, which is to say that the thing is actually has your interest in mind. So that's another in principle thing. If you can't show through the scrutability of the technology that the thing is truly in the interest of the user, then you can't let it loose, especially in this kind of context. So there's a whole other series of those that if you can build AI in that terms of design principles, like an ontological design framework, then that's an interesting conversation. You still want to run safety on it. You still don't just let the kids use it without testing it immediately. But at least then you're in a situation of not literally building something with the intention of disrupting intergenerational transmission, with the intention of obsoleting human relationship. So that's where I'm at. There's more to say, but I'll stop.